Hello and welcome to Safe for Work PMQs with Graham Hughes. Let's get into it.
I've been campaigning to improve health facilities in my community, and I'm pleased to see significant investment in Leicestershire with £14 million for a CDC in Hinckley and part of £20 billion for hospital improvements for the LRI and Glenfield. But I'm looking for a hat-trick of health in Hinckley. And what I'm looking for is a day case unit. The money is already there. It's tied up in red tape. I've raised this with the Health Secretary. Would the Prime Minister look to see what he can do? And would he come and like to open the CDC next year in Hinckley?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted that since its opening last month, the Hinckley CDC has already delivered, I believe, over 300 additional tests to the local community. My honourable friend will know that it's for the local health authorities to determine how to allocate the NHS budget in their area, but I have no doubt that he will continue to make the case for them for a day case unit in his community.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, can I join your tribute to John and wish him all the best on behalf of the House, and join the Prime Minister in his comments about the Holocaust Memorial. I'd also like to wish Muslims across the country a happy Eid. And Mr. Speaker, last week the Labour Party lost Margaret McDonough, our first female General Secretary, and a trailblazer in every sense of the word. Margaret provided guidance, leadership and loyal friendship to so many in the Labour movement. And it wasn't long after I started in this job that Margaret was at my door, and I will be forever grateful for the advice and support that she gave me. We will all miss her terribly. Mr. Speaker, his party spent thousands of pounds on adverts attacking plans to build 300,000 new homes a year. At the same time, his housing minister says it's Tory party policy to build 300,000 new homes a year. So is he for building 300,000 new homes a year or against it?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I can just remind the honourable gentleman of our record since being in office. 2.2 million additional homes, Mr. Speaker. Housing starts double the number we inherited from the Labour Party. More homes meeting the decent home standards. Housing supply up 10% in the last year that we have figures for. And in the last year we had figures for. We also saw a 20-year high in the number of first-time buyers, Mr. Speaker. That's a Conservative government delivering for this country.
Oh, he said delivering. He said it.
Mr. Speaker, what a difficult question. Can he point to a single person in housing, in construction, anywhere, who thinks he'll actually hit his target of 300,000 new homes a year? Anyone?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the record is that in the last 3 years, we've delivered almost record numbers of new home building in every one of those years. But Mr. Speaker, he talks about targets, so let's be clear. I promised to put local people in control of new housing. I delivered on that policy within weeks of becoming Prime Minister. But I am confused from the honourable gentleman because
you put people in
first,
housing
the Shadow Community and Housing Secretary said communities should have control. But then he said we should get the targets back and disempower local people. I do want to give him some advice. I don't think it's local people that are the problem. It's a Labour Party policy.
We are playing Sunak bingo. We've already got
Mr. Speaker, presumably if he could have identified a single person who thought he'd hit his target, he would have told us. And there you have the problem. 1 minute he says he's for building new houses, the next he's campaigning against them. And the truth is, far from delivering, since he crumbled to his backbenchers and scrapped mandatory targets, house building has collapsed. He knows it, they know it, and every expert is telling them it. Why didn't he just admit it? He's not going to get anywhere near his target, is he?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman now claims that he supports house building, especially on the green belt. But unfortunately for him, it's good that he agrees that he does believe that now. But unfortunately for him, the Shadow Deputy Prime Minister, the Shadow Minister for Women, the Shadow Health, Justice, Defence, Business, Northern Ireland and Scotland Ministers are all united against more house building in their areas, Mr. Speaker. I have to say to them, though, Mr. Speaker, I would say to them, though, they don't have to worry too much because he's never actually kept a promise he's made.
Mr. Speaker, you can tell from his answer, non-answer, and his body language, he's actually given up. He's given up. And his failure isn't just shattering the dream of those who desperately want to own their own home, it's also hitting those who already have a mortgage. Because of their economic chaos, mortgage holders will be £2,900 a year poorer. How can they ever look the British people in the eye again and claim to be the party of home ownership?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think he's noticed that his shadow housing secretary doesn't actually agree with his new policy of concreting over the Greenbelt, Mr. Speaker. She's been campaigning against developments in her own constituency. She said she wanted to prevent urban sprawl and provide green space for local people. I think that's quite sensible, but it's classic Labour, Mr. Speaker, saying one thing here, doing another thing elsewhere. You simply can't trust a word they say.
These guys are going to cost the taxpayer.
At least he isn't claiming they are the party of home ownership anymore, because we are.
Thousands. And his response is always the same. The other side would be worse.
Mr. Speaker, saying one thing here, doing another thing elsewhere. You simply can't trust a word they say.
At least he isn't claiming they are the party of home ownership anymore, because we are. Mr. Speaker. He's given up. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister says he's 100% on it. But his definition of 100% on it is to gently ask the banks to do the right thing. His softly approach, refusing to put mandatory measures in place, risks leaving 1 million households without support. How many will have to lose their homes before he'll stand up for the people his party have pushed into economic misery?
Mr. Speaker, in fact, the vast majority of the mortgage market is now covered by the new mortgage charter that the Chancellor's brought in. That is delivering practical help to mortgage holders, allowing them to extend their terms,
delivering bigger bills than ever before, delivering a house cost of living crisis like never before,
actually, there is now practical support
delivering a housing market crash like never before.
Home ownership, Mr. Speaker. That's why we, on this side of the House, introduced a 95% mortgage guarantee scheme. It's why we introduced the first homes and shared ownership schemes to get people onto the housing ladder. And crucially, Mr. Speaker, it's why we cut stamp duty. So now what we've seen is the highest number of first-time buyers in 20 years, Mr. Speaker. That is twice the number that the Labour Party ever managed.
Mr. Speaker, it's sort of housing crisis. What crisis with this Prime Minister? He must be the only person in the country who thinks that enough houses have been built in the last 13 years. And whether it's those dreaming of getting the keys to their first home or those already with mortgages, the ambitions of families across the country have been crushed by his failing Tory government. House building at its lowest rate since the war because he can't stand up to his own party. A Tory mortgage bombshell because they crashed the economy. Millions left without support because he won't make lenders put families first. Rather than lecturing the rest of the country on holding their nerve, why doesn't he try and locate his?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as always, he hasn't actually taken the time to understand the detail of what we're doing. So, again, I'm happy to explain it again, Mr. Speaker, because it's right that we provide support for mortgage owners, which is why we improve the generosity of the support for mortgage interest scheme. It's why we've introduced a new mortgage charter, which, by the way, goes much more farther than the Labour Party policy on protecting mortgage holders does. On house building, we're proud to protect the Greenbelt and invest millions more in developing brownfield sites. Mr. Speaker, the simple truth is, that's what I said I would do, and that's what we've delivered, and that is the difference between us. I deliver what I promised, he just breaks his.
What a load of nonsense. Softball
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gammony.
Labour-run Kirklees Council's local plan is seeing hundreds of homes built on greenfield sites, but The agreed developer levies, the Section 106 agreements, which are supposedly for local infrastructure spending, seem to be disappearing into a black hole. So does the Prime Minister agree with me that agreed infrastructure levies from developers shouldn't be going into a general slush fund? They should be spent on local roads, local schools and local health services for the communities impacted by those developments.
My backyard.
My honourable friend raises an excellent point, and that's why the government is reforming the Section 106 payment system to ensure that new development is matched by new infrastructure, because the current system sees far too little of the developers' profits going to build new schools, hospitals or transport infrastructure. It's also too slow and plagued by uncertainties, and that particularly hampers smaller local developers. So it will be replaced by a new non-negotiable, local determined infrastructure levy, which will deliver exactly what the honourable gentleman and others want to see, investment in local communities.
SNP leader Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to start by paying tribute to SNP legend Winnie Ewan and Scotland men's national team former manager Craig Brown, who both so sadly passed in recent days, and to all Muslims who are celebrating Eid Mubarak. Mr. Speaker, on Sunday the Prime Minister patronised the public when he told them that in the face of ever-increasing mortgage bills that they simply need to hold their nerve. What a nerve. So may I ask him, the near billionaire, when was the last time that he struggled to pay a bill?
Brilliant.
Mr. Speaker,
Brilliant.
The reason that mortgage rates are rising is because of inflation, Mr. Speaker. That is the root cause, which is why it's absolutely the right policy to tackle, halve inflation and reduce it back to target. Now, that does mean that we do have to make difficult decisions. It does mean we have to be patient while the impact of those decisions actually has an impact. But in the meantime, Mr. Speaker, as I was explaining previously, we are taking practical steps to support mortgage holders across the United Kingdom, particularly through the SMI scheme and the new mortgage charter.
Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, that answer confirms what we already know, that this Prime Minister is out of touch and the Tory party is soon to be out of time. And what the public really want is change. But in a week where the Conservative Party and indeed the Labour Party both refuse to accept proposals for public sector pay rises, whilst at the same time accepting the economic damage of Brexit, is it not the case that Westminster does not offer the people real change nor real hope for the future?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman just exposes the complete economic illiteracy of the SNP's position. His first question talks about the challenges posed on ordinary families by higher interest rates caused by higher inflation. What does his next question do? Support a policy that would increase government borrowing and make the situation worse. Mr. Speaker, it just demonstrates completely candidly why the SNP's approach to economic management is simply not fit for anyone in the United Kingdom.
Our economy is collapsing. People are feeling the pinch.
Local police stations are a key part of communities such as Aldridge in my constituency, and that's why I continue to make the case to Labour's Police and Crime Commissioner to save and strengthen the role of Aldridge Police Station, not force it to close. So does the Prime Minister agree with me that any such closure would be reckless, and Police and Crime Commissioners should be working with local communities and local police teams to provide greater certainty, particularly given the extra 1,376 extra police officers this government has put into the West Midlands?
New star Kate Fanny writes,
Mr. Speaker,
isn't
I'm pleased
answering
to
the
hear
questions.
about the extra police officers that the government has funded in my right honourable friend's community, but I am concerned to hear about the planned closure of Aldridge Police Station. I'd like to thank my right honourable friend for raising such an important issue. I know it's one on which she is championing her constituents. As she will know, unfortunately, this is a decision of the locally elected Labour Police and Crime Commissioner, and I would join her in urging them to think again.
Liz Savile-Roberts.
The Prime Minister's solution to inflation is to push families into poverty while letting corporate profits pile up. Economic illiteracy. The IMF said this week that the way to cut inflation is for companies to cut their profit margins. It's corporate greed fueling inflation, not workers' need for fair pay. Can he explain to the 1 in 5 people in Wales facing hunger because they cannot afford to buy decent food, why they must pay his price for lowering inflation.
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, actually, my honourable friend the Chancellor met with all the economic regulators this morning, and they'll be making an announcement later about their plans to ensure fairness of pricing and supply chain to ease the burden on consumers. But I'm glad she brought up the IMF when it comes to tackling inflation, because actually the IMF, in their words, strongly endorsed our plan to halve inflation, and they called our steps both decisive and responsible.
Jonathan Ward.
Mr. Speaker, as my right honourable friend knows, I've been liaising closely with the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities and with the Treasury with regard to the terrible news of Woking Council's recent Section 114 notice. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that in this scenario, the vulnerable must be protected, and that the local councillors of all parties need to work together to try to put the council's finances back on the right track?
Prime Minister.
I know my honourable friend is a great champion for his Woking residents, and as he knows, the Secretary of State for Levelling Up has intervened in this authority and appointed commissioners to ensure that decisions are taken that provide the best outcomes for residents, including the most vulnerable and indeed the public purse. I agree with him that local councillors should be working together with the commissioners to put the council's finances in order. The commissioners will submit their first report to the Secretary of State, setting out progress on the council's path to improvement and financial sustainability, and I look forward with him to seeing further progress.
Sir Christopher Bryant.
Thank you. The Prime Minister has had responsibility for the UK economy now for 1,323 days, and he's delivered. He's delivered the largest national peacetime debt ever, the largest tax burden since the Second World War, the highest core inflation since 1991, the fastest interest rate rises since 1989, and the biggest fall in living standards in our history. So will he stop lecturing my constituents about holding their nerve, ditch the lame excuses, and admit that he is literally the worst person to be leading this country through a cost of living crisis? Woo!
Mr. Speaker,
Sit down.
Mr. Speaker, again, what do we hear from the party opposite? Only ideas that would make the situation far worse, Mr. Speaker.
He actually said the words!
Supported plans to borrow tens of billions
Oh
of
my
pounds
God!
more. That would make inflation worse.
I'm sorry, he literally just said, it's awful, I get that, but it would be worse under Labour. And that's what I keep saying, and he actually said the words. He's saying it now. This is phenomenal.
The honourable gentleman has sat there and said that we should not stand up to unaffordable union pay demands. That would make the situation worse. And the honourable gentleman has sat there and supported plans to not exploit our domestic sources of energy, Mr. Speaker, imperiling our energy security.
We're worried about the
The
climate.
situation worse for British families
we want
today,
to pay people the correct amount for their work.
This Conservative government will keep doing the right thing.
This billionaire doesn't want any of that. Almost billionaire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents rely on many nearby hospitals. Milton Keynes, where this government has committed to a new women and children's hospital. Stoke Mandeville, who has just completed the build of a new children's A&E. But also Wickham, where infrastructure and maintenance issues in the ageing tower is preventing around 2,000 operations a year from going ahead. My local trust has a plan for a £200 million new clinical centre at Wickham Hospital. Will my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, work with myself and Buckinghamshire colleagues to make that a reality?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. Whilst he knows that we are no longer inviting further schemes to join the new hospital programme, I can tell him that in the future new schemes will be considered through the rolling programme of capital investment in hospital infrastructure. That will secure the building of new hospitals beyond 2030 and mean future investment to upgrade the NHS estate across the country. Now, future plans for that will obviously be set out in spending reviews and fiscal events, but in the meantime, I know that he will continue to make the passionate case for Wickham Hospital, and I join him in that.
See you later.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker.
Hundreds of steelworkers are outside Parliament today, and some are in the gallery, calling on the Prime Minister to act now to back our vital steel industry before it is too late. So will he confirm today that he will match the ambition of the Labour Party and our international competitors to deliver competitive energy prices, invest in green steel production, use UK steel in our procurement systems, and protect us from dirty steel imports by introducing climate measures? And when will he get on with protecting and supporting the industry?
Mr. Speaker, we're proud to support the steel industry and value the contribution that it makes to this country, which is why we've put in place the Energy Intensive Industry Scheme that provides hundreds of millions of pounds of support to steel companies with their energy bills. We've also introduced the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund so that companies can apply for capital grants to help them with the transition. We are taking forward plans in the Treasury for carbon border adjustment mechanisms to ensure a level playing field. And it's why, Mr. Speaker,
Sorry, while he's blabbering on, I just want to say Don Ducat's made a really good point, which I don't think has come up in the main chat here, but it's in the live chat if you do the drop-down menu. Unless our fossil fuels are nationalised, they sell on the international market, so why do Tories pretend we own our own resources? Yeah, it's a very good question. Very, very good question. Because they know most people don't really take much notice of this kind of thing. So they can get away with winning cheap political points by saying that they don't want to invest in Britain, when actually, if we do go ahead with these new oil fields in the North Sea, a lot of those profits are actually going to go to the people of Norway, not the UK.
During the pandemic, that I stepped in to support financially a steel company in Wales.
Sir James Duddridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Despite 5 years of lobbying, sadly the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association International branch will leave the United Kingdom. Mr. Speaker, you know this is a great concern to the House, although perhaps something a little niche for our constituents. It is important. They need special status. The government haven't granted that by way of a short bill or an amendment to an existing bill. And could the Prime Minister at this late stage, this month, do something about this? Because otherwise they'll be gone, never to come back.
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the United Kingdom values the work of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. My right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, has made clear that he does not want the CPA International to relocate. He's written to them in March to confirm that officials from the FCDO would work with the CPA to find a mutually acceptable solution to the status issue, and I look forward to seeing progress.
Alison McGovern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, your constituents and mine, I think, have been made a promise by the Prime Minister. Inflation at or below 5% by the end of this year. So I want to ask the Prime Minister, what will happen if he fails to meet that promise? Will it be yet more ranting on about the Labour Party, or will it be the general election my constituents crave?
Yeah, go on. Money where your mouth is.
Mr. Speaker, we are sticking to the course of bringing inflation down, Mr. Speaker. I think what the Labour Party need to understand is that requires making difficult and tough decisions, Mr. Speaker. It requires prioritising. It requires being able to say no when people come looking, asking you to borrow more money. Those are the type of responsible decisions that I will make and the Conservative government will make, because they're the right ones for the country.
He's out to help out. Kill thousands of British people.
For over 160 years, Southport Pier has been at the centre of our visitor economy, welcoming visitors from far and wide, including Chorley, Mr. Speaker. It stood the tests of time, except for the mismanagement of Labour-controlled Sefton Council, who closed our pier. Businesses are concerned it will have a huge impact on tourism. Will the Prime Minister condemn these actions and support my campaign and efforts to work with this Conservative government to get our pier open?
Isn't it interesting? So all the Tory questions are always going to be a mixture of Labour Council or Labour Mayor is doing this and that's naughty. It will be a question saying, what's the next policy coming up on X, Y, Z? Or it'll be some kind of combination of cancer, dementia, children dying or something isn't that bad. So does the Prime Minister agree that this is a bad thing? And case in point, this guy here in Southport, which is just north of Liverpool, that's a place that shouldn't be a Tory seat. He's probably going to lose his seat in the next election, along with the Tories in Blackpool North and Blackpool South. And they know it. And so all he can do is stand up and try and criticise Labour for the fact that, let's say, Southport Pier is experiencing economic, turmoil, because we're all experiencing economic turmoil because we have idiots, incompetent idiots in charge of this country.
Mr. Speaker, can I welcome my honourable friend's commitment to the important community assets in his constituency, such as the historic Grade 2 listed Southport Pier. And I am pleased to say that he is working and succeeded in getting the government to provide £2 million as part of the Coastal Community Fund to undertake improvements in the pier. And that's alongside the landmark £35.5 million town deal.
Liverpool got nearly £2 billion from the European Objective 1 Fund. Not 2 million, billion with a B. But, Brexit.
Deal for Southport, which is the second largest town deal anywhere in the country.
Samantha Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the first opportunity that I've had to put a question to the Prime Minister for the residents of the City of Chester. So, why does the Prime Minister think it's acceptable for sewage to be pumped into the beautiful River Dee that flows through Chester for the next 27 years?
Yeah, that's the deal they've done.
Mr.
That's the deal they did.
Mr. Speaker, of course it's not acceptable, and that's why this government has gone further than any other government in tackling this issue, committing to monitor 100% of storm overflows, an investment programme of £56 billion to upgrade infrastructure, and enshrining in law strict targets, as well as introducing unlimited fines for water companies. But when it came to talking about those policies in this House, the party opposite...
I don't think those unlimited fines have come in yet. And don't forget, the fine for copyright infringement is unlimited. But for many years, the fine for literally pouring sewage into our watercourses was limited. Says a lot about the people in charge and what their priorities are, doesn't it? And also, David Dax made a good point with no mention of the Dispatches documentary about Boris Johnson and the Lebedevs, and the fact that we've given a Russian asset a seat in our legislature for life.
Couldn't even be bothered to turn up and vote for them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Later today, Parliament will welcome apprentices from around the UK who were working in the aerospace industry. And I'm very much looking forward to meeting Callum and Brittany, who are both apprentices in my constituency of Wolverhampton North East at Collins Aerospace. Would he join me in celebrating apprenticeships in the aerospace industry and encourage colleagues to attend and meet their apprentices?
Well, can I join with my honourable friend in both celebrating everyone doing an apprentice and encourage everyone to go and meet theirs later on today and pay tribute to Callum and Brittany in particular. And she's absolutely right to highlight the importance of the aerospace industry, particularly because of our new defence cooperation agreement with Italy and Japan to build a new generation of fighter aircraft. Thousands of new jobs will be created across the country. Many of those will be through apprentices, and that's an example of this Conservative government providing opportunities for the next generation.
Mr. Speaker, Prime Minister, last year 1.7 million children missed more than 10% of their schooling. 125,000 children were absent more than they were in school, and a further 140,000 children were missing from formal schooling completely. This is both a safeguarding and an educational catastrophe, and is happening on the Prime Minister's watch. Yesterday, the Schools Minister told the Education Select Committee that primary legislation was required to initiate a national register for children missing from education so we can find out where they are. Will the Prime Minister commit to bringing forward necessary legislation to combat this crisis for our children as a matter of urgency?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, I agree with the honourable gentleman that children missing school is a tragedy and it's incredibly damaging for educational outcomes, which is why during the pandemic and afterwards we invested £5 billion to help children catch up with lost learning. It's important that we continue to deliver on those plans, and we will of course make sure that we work with the sector to have more children attending school more often.
That's another thing they do. They go, we're going to deliver. We're going to do this thing. They can't say we're doing it, can they? They can't say we're actually doing this thing. They say they're delivering it, which means you haven't got your package yet. You haven't got your thing that you've ordered. It hasn't actually arrived. It's being delivered. So we are in that uncomfortable situation where you don't actually know whether you want to go to the toilet just in case there's a knock on the door as soon as you sit down. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the situation that the whole nation is in, with the worst delivery company ever. That is the Conservative Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Economic recovery and reconstruction will be vitally important to Ukraine when it comes to rebuilding a free and sovereign nation. So will my right honourable friend help galvanise the expertise of our UK's private sector to help strengthen Ukraine's recovery and their economic prospects after this devastating war?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, time and time again, Ukraine has shown its ability to rapidly harness innovation and creativity, and I know that its economic recovery will be no different. And my right honourable friend is absolutely right to highlight that private sector expertise and investment will be critical to that recovery. And I was pleased that over 400 world-leading companies pledged to back Ukraine's reconstruction at the very successful recovery conference that the UK hosted the other week. We're doing our part as well, Mr.
This is the other thing they say. I was going to say, we had a meeting about it. They always do this on the environmental issues. They've not done anything. This government's done nothing to help the climate catastrophe be averted in any way, shape or form. In fact, in many ways, by many metrics, they are making a bad situation worse, so much more worse. But what they do is they'll say, but we had a meeting, we had a very successful meeting, we had a meeting about it, we had COP26, a very successful meeting that we had a meeting, and this was just done it again there. He's just saying, oh, well, we had a meeting about it, we had a discussion, we discussed that. And it's like, it's so frustrating. If you've read the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books, or you've seen the TV show or the movie or whatever, or the radio series, you'll know that there were the Gogol Frisians, and they crash landed on Earth on the B Ark. And these are the Gogol Frisians. They're in charge of our country. And it's just painful to watch them just go, oh, the house is on fire. Okay, it's all right. We're going to have a meeting about it. So everyone sit down. We'll have a meeting. And the house is on fire. He's screaming at them, the house is on fire. It is burning right now. And they're like, yeah, just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Does anyone want tea? It's like a comedy sketch, but it isn't, because it's our lives, and we have to put up with this. And this is the tricks that they play every time. We're gonna I'm gonna have to make like a thing for the screen that comes up with like a bingo numbers where basically they light up when he says these things time and time again, because Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson before him, and Theresa May before him, and Liz Truss was only prime minister for a week, but before then, Cameron, they're like those little toys that you could get. You just pull the like an action man. You pull the string on it, and it only had a few set things that it could say. Delivering.
Mr. Speaker, with a $3 billion World Bank loan guarantee on top of all the other investment that we've put in place. And I think what the conference showed is that there's enormous momentum across the world to support Ukraine's recovery, and that recovery and ambition is being led by the United Kingdom.
Mr. Speaker, a university student in Lewisham has seen her rent rise by £200 a month due to the mortgage rate increases. She is now at risk of homelessness, and she can't return to the family home. She has no choice but to use food banks, even though she has 2 part-time jobs. Not only is she falling behind in her studies, she's falling further into debt, and she's falling into depression. What does the Prime Minister say to constituents like mine, who are paying the dual price of this government's cost of living crisis and mortgage rates crisis?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we've taken significant action to help families across the country, most notably by taxing the windfall profits of energy companies and using that money to pay around half of a typical family, including all of her constituents' energy bills. That support is worth £1,500, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased that energy bills are forecast to fall £430 when the price cap resets in a couple of days. But beyond that, there's considerable support for the most vulnerable in our society, including £900 of cost of living payments for those on universal credit, and additional support for pensioners and indeed disabled people, Mr. Speaker, and that's what we'll continue to do.
£17 a week.
Speaker, we are heading into the 5th week
of Sandwell Labour's refuse strikes. We've had flying pickets, we've had reports of the GMB blocking ambulance workers getting out of their depot as a result of their picket line, and the PCC trying to encourage the police not to police it. Can I ask my friend to ensure that he convenes a meeting to resolve this? And perhaps he'll join me and tell Labour politicians, particularly one in particular, work is fine and put people before your paymasters.
Bloody hell. Looks like he's going to burst the vein in his forehead there.
We've done very well, don't spoil it now, Prime Minister.
Well, my honourable friend put it very well.
Bit of a performance there, wasn't it? Performative
because, Mr.
outrage.
Speaker, the Labour Party is unable to stand up to its union paymasters.
Let's talk about the Tories paymasters, who are the Russians, who are literally the Russian state that has gone in with mercenaries from the Middle East, so ex-ISIS members, to a European country, Ukraine, and raped and murdered and pillaged with almost impunity. And they got away with it. Like the ones who didn't die, the ones who went home with all the stuff that's stolen, Putin's still in charge. They fund the modern Conservative Party. That's where these mother effers get their money from. And so when they say, oh, but this guy gives to Just Stop Oil and he also gives to the Labour Party. Yeah. But your backers also give to the Russian military machine that is crushing Ukraine at this very moment. Although Ukraine is fighting back very valiantly, and hopefully this is the end game for Putin. I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but who funds Labour is one of the most frustrating attack lines when Labour are being funded by private individuals who might also give money to other environmental causes and things like that, left-wing causes, while they are being directly funded out in the open by Russian oligarchs who also fund the war in Ukraine. Disgusting, disgusting people, these Tories. Thank you very much to One Angry Pagan for that £5 super chat. I love a face-to-face with these liars. It would be fun to tear their so-called logic to pieces and then watch them try and cope with it. And meanwhile, Vendetta is saying Putin, 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 etc. Traitors. Exactly.
Back our plans to introduce minimum service and safety levels in critical industries. That's a type of practical action that supports working families. It's one that the Labour Party isn't strong enough to actually support.
Oh, Mr. Weakling. Can't even stand up against his own MPs.
Events in Russia at the weekend, it is unclear what the future holds for the Wagner Group. But what can never be washed away is the catalogue of crimes they've committed across Africa, the Middle East, and of course Ukraine. But despite all of that, Mr. Speaker, the government doesn't yet have a permanent Cabinet Office official to coordinate all of the organs of government to pursue the criminals in the Wagner Group. Will he appoint one? And crucially, will he fund collecting evidence of Wagner Group war crimes that have been committed across the world, so that these criminals, no matter what happens, can be brought to justice in future?
Mr. Speaker, we have consistently condemned the Wagner Group, and we carefully monitor their actions.
You've taken their money, carefully taken their money. You've taken their money, you've taken their funding, you've played tennis with them.
We have designated both the Wagner Group and
playing
its leader
tennis with terrorists
under our
as the Tory party
already, and we also
the modern
support
Tory
international
party
mechanisms which hold individual mercenaries in the Wagner Group to account for violations of international.
The mercenaries of the Wagner Group are Russian oligarchs. The people who actually make the money out of it are Russian oligarchs. And the best place for you to launder your money in the world is Tory Britain. Tory-led Britain. If you are a Russian oligarch and you have your own private army that is going out committing war crimes, the best way to launder your money is to get down to Londongrad.
International law, but I also reassure him that we are working very closely with our partners to counter the malign use of such proxies by Russia and more generally across the continent.
Take their money though, won't you?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday night, an illegal traveller encampment was established on Bretton Park. On Saturday, the much-loved Bretton Festival is due to take place on Bretton Park. This House passed legislation that gives more powers to police to tackle these illegal encampments.
Will the Prime Minister make it clear today from the dispatch box that he expects police to use those powers on these encampments that blight public spaces and public parks in places
Let's
like
go
Peterborough?
after travellers, even though they're a minority of a minority.
Mr. Speaker, we absolutely recognise the misery that unauthorised encampments.
How about the misery that you cause? How
And
about
that's why we've
the
delivered
misery
on
that
our
your
manifesto
party
commitment
causes?
to give police the powers they need to
London
tackle
grad,
those
biggest money
people
launderer
on
in the world.
unauthorised encampments who are causing harm. Now, of course, how the police use these powers is an operational matter for chief constables, but we wouldn't have legislated for them if we didn't expect them to use them, Mr. Speaker. And I am told that Home Office officials are liaising regularly with the National Police Chiefs Council on this exact matter.
Final question, Martin Docker to use.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the past couple of days, yet again, we have been reminded that a member of the other House was appointed contrary to the recommendations of MI5. And in the Channel 4 film, that even the monarch was actually asked to be involved because Whitehall officials were so opposed, given that they were deemed a security risk to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So can I ask the Prime Minister, does he agree with MI5 or with his predecessor that peer should still be in the other House?
Prime Minister.
If Mr. Speaker, for obvious reasons, I'll talk in more general terms, with the House of Lords Appointment Commission vets crossbench and party political life
And
peerage
said
nominations
no.
to the House of Lords, and where
said no.
appropriate, seeks advice from government departments and agencies, and were a Prime Minister to recommend a peerage against the Commission's formal advice, the House of Lords Appointment Commission has previously undertaken that it would write publicly to the relevant Parliamentary Select Committee.
That is not an answer. That is not an answer. Oh my God, that was. I mean, even by the standards of this bunch of clowns, that was pretty grim, wasn't it? I mean, you know, just turn around and going, oh yeah, but there's an independent parliamentary group. No, it's not independent. It's the House of Lords Committee, and they said no. They said no. They actually said we want to take this to the Queen to get her to block the appointment of Lord Lebedev into the House of Lords. Something that was flagged up at the time by a lot of us who were like, "What the hell is going on? How is this happening?" Thank you very much to One Angry Pagan for the £2 super chat, and yes, as always, Slava Ukraini. I feel like I'm going to cry, says Duke Vengeance. Please don't cry. Get angry, Vengeance. Today we'll have our Graham's bro. What? This is the same guy who torched Johnson. Oh, you're saying the cat on TV because his name was Hughes. He was another Hughes. He was another Yozza. We're everywhere. We're everywhere whilst Yozzers. I'm just going to make myself bigger. Sounds a bit wrong, doesn't it? There you go. Dreadful Shambles. I hope you're not talking about my broadcast here. I hope you're talking about the Tory party in general, which is a dreadful shambles. Guy Fawkes was hung for less and hanged for less than these traitors. Indeed he was. When they say, was it Guy Fawkes was the last person to enter Parliament with honest intentions? But yeah, I would say that last person. I mean, there's been some good MPs over the years. Just the current crop of Tory MPs are the worst. They are the worst humans that have come from this island somehow, or this planet, and they're in charge. W. James says, Graham, this is not good for your mental health. Well, possibly not, but actually, honestly, if I watch this without you guys, if I watch this without the comments and people joining in and saying, oh my God, they're lying and fact-checking along the way, as you do, it would be worse for me. I actually could find this quite cathartic to be able to watch in real time, pause the tape, broadcast even. I'm so old. Pause the gramophone and then pause the wax cylinder, and actually call these lies out and point out the weasel words that are being used by the Tories to try and absolve themselves of the guilt of all of the issues that we're facing in the country at the moment, which are all their fault. Everything from Brexit was their idea, austerity was their idea, COVID, the response to COVID, the terrible response to COVID, the way we handled it was their idea. They were in charge at that time. They had an 80-seat majority. They could do whatever they like under the British Parliament system. parliamentary system. And what they like to do is have parties while we died, while our families, while our friends died. And they partied on. I thought that was okay. Rishi Sunak got a fixed penalty notice for being at a party. He can't wash his hands of this. They're all in it together. And although Rishi Sunak would love us to believe that he was just born fresh as a daisy into the party 6 months ago, and it's all been new since then, it's under new management, it's not. Same old Tories, same old lies. Thank you very much for One Angry Pagan's £5 super chat there. Hating the dig at the traveller community, some of my family. Thanks very much for the super chat, man. And like, honestly, it winds me up when people who are marginalised already, and the Tories have done this for years. Get yourself a copy of the Daily Mail from 150 years ago. Who are they blaming for everything? Foreigners, Jews, single mothers, gypsies. Have a look. They're blaming the exact same people that they blame now. Except now they'll find some other minority group to go after. They can't really defend themselves, and then say, oh, but this minority group have got an agenda and they're making life a misery for the rest of us. When really, we make their lives a misery because we won't just let them live their lives the way they would like to live their lives. In a free and equal society, that's what we should have. And people in the travelling community should be looked after. I believe that, and encouraged to have schools that operate for them. We do that with religious communities. I don't see why the traveller community should be different. We make accommodations when rich people want to go and watch horses run around in Cheltenham. We don't make those same accommodations for the traveller communities. And I don't know why we don't. I think it'd be a good thing that we do. And we then... we other them. We other them. And it's something that has been going on the right since forever. But it's just, yeah. Rage mode shutting down. Chill mode initiated, says One Angry Pagan. Yeah. It's just one more of the reasons why the Conservative Party have, I want to say, lost their way, but in my entire life, they've just been awful. There's been moments where they've not been quite as awful. And I don't know if they've ever been this awful before, but they are absolutely dreadful. They need to be out in their ear. And although the Tories, getting rid of the Tories might put me and Phil and Max and Supertansky out of a job, we would still like to see that happen. I saw a great interview with a representative of a charity who once said, what's the end game here? I said, I want to be out of a job. I don't want this issue to be a problem anymore, so I can go and work on something else. And that's what we want at the end of the day. We want the Tories out, and a government, I guess our next mission, once Labour get into power, is to hold them to account and make sure that they do the things that they say they're going to do and do the things that we want them to do. Tories clutch their pearl necklaces at anti-process select committee with Guy from Anti-monarchy demo says it all, really. Indeed. Tories defend the undefensible. Fascists, by the way. Yeah, need a bigger ditch. Indeed. You search 450 years ago, DM front page, and got hurrah for the black shirts. That was the 1930s, wasn't it? So that was less than 100 years ago. That was 80 years ago. Hurrah for the black shirts. Oh, sorry, 90 years ago. Hurrah for the black shirts. They were the British fascists under Ellsworth Mosley. And the Daily Mail hasn't changed at all since then. Graham, can you please throw the Tories out? the Tories from power. I'm trying. I can't do it alone. Obviously, we live in a democracy, but I'm trying to do my little bit towards that. The Tories have abandoned one nation politics since 2010 and certainly 2016. They have indeed. F the Tories always, says W. James, which won't appear here because it doesn't allow swear words. You will have plenty to talk about because the SHIT will seep out from when they were in charge. There's a mountain of stuff we don't know about. I know. On top of the mountain that we know about, we need an inquiry into Russian interference into the Brexit vote. We still haven't had that. They interfered, and it was a knife-edge decision. And all of the Leave camps, like Vote Leave, Be Leave, Leave.eu, they all cheated. They all broke electoral law. And if it hadn't been a advisory referendum, it would have had to legally have been rerun. If it was a legally binding referendum, because of all of the problems in it, it would have to be rerun. And it cost the life of one of our MPs who was stabbed and shot to death in the street by a supporter of Brexit. And the Remain side said, "Oh well, we'll suspend activities on this for out of respect," and the Leave side didn't. That should be all you need to know about the Brexit debate and whether you're on the right side of it or not. Anyway, so thank you very, 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 very much for watching. I'll be back later with some more moments of truth. I've got so much to get through. Oh my word. Phil Morehouse will be here in the morning for Morning Brew, so that'll be good. Enjoy that with Phil, and I'll be in the chat for that, so come and say hello. And there'll be lots more stuff going on Labour Social over the next few weeks. Hopefully I'm going to be out and about a little bit, getting more interviews with people. I don't want to be stuck here in the studio all through the summer because, it was raining this morning, but now it's quite nice. I would like to get out the house. It's not healthy. It's not healthy. We all know how the Russians did. We had our problem with them in 2016 and caused us problems since here in the USA. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.